Antariksha Deva Gana Gandhava Siddhacharana Stuti Nitya Kore Bhadya Gita. Anta Deva Gana Gandhava Siddhacharana Stuti Nitya Kore Bhadya Gita. Nataka Vadhaka Bhata Navadvipe Yara Nata Save Ashi Nache Paya Prita. Yara Nata Save Ashi Nache Paya Prita. Antarikshe, in outer space. Deva Gana, the demigods. Gandharva, the inhabitants of Gandharva Loka. Siddha, the inhabitants of Siddha Loka. Charana, the professional singers of the heavenly planets. Stuti, prayers. Nritya, dancing. Kore, do. Vadya, music. Gita, song. Nartaka, dancers. Vadaka, professional drummers. Bhakta, professional blessers. Navadvipe, in the city of Navadvip. Yara, of whom. Nate, stage. Sabe, all of them. Asi, coming. Nache, began to dance. Paya, achieving. Prita, happiness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In outer space, all the demigods, including the inhabitants of Gandharva Loka, Siddha Loka and Charana Loka, offered their prayers and danced to the accompaniment of music, songs, and the beating of drums. Similarly, in Navadvip city, all the professional dancers, musicians, and blessers gathered together, dancing in great jubilation. Purport. As there are professional singers, dancers, and reciters of prayers in the heavenly planets, so in India, still, there are professional dancers, blessers, and singers, all of whom assemble together during householder ceremonies, especially marriages and birth ceremonies. These professional men earn their livelihood by taking charity on such occasions from the homes of the Hindus. Eunuchs also take advantage of such ceremonies to receive charity. That is their means of livelihood. Such men never become servants or engage themselves in agriculture or business occupations. They simply take charity from neighborhood friends to maintain themselves peacefully. The Bhattas are a class of brahmanas who go to such ceremonies to offer blessings by composing poems with references to the Vedic scriptures. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So in this chapter we see various kinds of people are celebrating at the birth of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So when the Supreme Lord comes to this material world, he also comes with his associates. He sends his associates ahead of time, and they get things ready. They prepare for the Lord's descent. So we see here devotees like Haridas Thakur. Can I have some water? Someone bring this only. Thank you. I think she's good. So, excuse me. So we can see here, it's written that devotees like Haridas Thakur and Advaita Acharya were feeling very jubilant and dancing and chanting. And there were respectable people. It said that when Jagannath Mishra, when Sachi Mata had Lord Chaitanya in her womb, when she was carrying the Lord, then Jagannath Mishra found that he would just walk around and just go about his normal business, but that suddenly people were bringing valuable things. They were just inspired. Oh, you're such a nice Brahmana. Oh, let me give you some gold. Let me give you some beautiful silks. Let me give you some fruits. And he became very opulent. We can see as soon as the presence of the Supreme Lord is there, all opulence follows. The goddess of fortune naturally follows the Lord. It's said that the goddess of fortune is sometimes described as chanchalam, flickering. So if you worship the goddess of fortune, you might, thank you, you might sometimes get some wealth and then that wealth will go. But one who is in contact with the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, then naturally all opulence comes without any extraneous endeavor. This is also, as Caitanya Swami was explaining yesterday, described by Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat, that Navadvip was incredibly opulent at this time. And it said that there were hundreds of thousands of people would bathe at one bathing ghat. So it's hard to imagine that, but you can just imagine. Those who've been to India, you know the bathing ghats where the steps down and you bathe in Ganga. That at that time in Navadvip there were so many people that just one bathing ghat would have 100,000 people bathing there. So we can just imagine the opulence of Navadvip in this time. And of course it has to be that to be a fit place for the appearance of the Supreme Lord. So, it's being described here, the wives that Brahmanas, great demigods, were visiting. And we sometimes think when we hear these descriptions of the higher planets and the demigods that, it's so, wonderful up there. And in fact, if we look at the scriptures of the world, apart from the Vedic scriptures, or even within the Vedic scriptures, but apart from the Vedic scriptures that are looking to the Purushartha, the supreme goal, going back to Godhead, and all of the other religions of the world, the major religions, we can see that heaven is glorified as something so far beyond, it's something so much better, it's something to be aspired for. It's the goal, it's where you get your dreams fulfilled and where you get all the blessings of God, etc. But we can see here that the denizens of heaven, the one thing they don't have is they don't have love of God. They don't have pure love of God. Of course, they're devotees. The demigods are all devotees of the Lord. They're taking up respectable positions in the universal government of the Lord. But they're not, they don't have pure devotion. So when the Lord himself appears, even the demigods, the great beings of higher regions, they come down to see. And we can see the wives of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Nrsingadev even, were coming down to visit the Lord. So some people knew that the Lord was appearing, and some people, they just felt great joy. They didn't know why. It said that even at that time, the Lord arranged that there was an eclipse. So there was a full moon, but there was also an eclipse. And on the pretext of this eclipse, the Lord advented himself and his holy name at the same time, because in the Jyotish texts, the Shastras, then the eclipse is considered an inauspicious time. It's not an auspicious time for doing your material duties, for doing your business and establishing your household, etc. So everyone at that time is encouraged to do spiritual activity. It's a very good time for spiritual activity. So at this time when the eclipse was on, everyone was in the Ganga, and they were actually chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. They're chanting continually. And so this is when the Lord advented himself along with his holy name. Because everybody was chanting Hare Krishna. They were all engaged in the supreme Dharma, the Yuga Dharma, by chanting Hare Krishna. So we can see that also, no matter what is the material situation, whether we're materially in a exalted position or materially in a very fallen position, whether we're having great happiness in our conditioned life, or whether we're suffering great distress, whether our family life is going very nicely or our family life is having difficulties, everything becomes auspicious when we remember the Lord and when we take the holy name of the Lord. Everything becomes auspicious. We can see from this example that the apparently inauspicious event of the eclipse actually became the most auspicious event. Because everybody was chanting and hearing the holy name. Even it said that the Muslim people who weren't even followers, they were also chanting. They were seeing, oh, these Hindus are sitting in the river, so many millions. Wow, look at them all. Hari, 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 Hari. They're going, Hari Krishna. So they were kind of making fun, but then they were also chanting. So everybody was chanting the holy name. And Lord Chaitanya appeared. The father of Sachi Mata is named Nilamba Chakrabarti, and it said that at that time most of the Brahmins were conversant in the science of astrology, Jyotish, and actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur he gives the actual situation of the planets at the time of Lord Chaitanya's birth, and we can actually confirm that with modern software. You can actually see the exact time that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advented himself, and you can put his birth details in and you can see his birth chart. It's very amazing to see. And all of the planets are in very auspicious situations. He says Singha Lagna, so his Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains all the situation of the planets, that he had the lion, the Lagna Lord is the lion, ruled by the sun. He's the owner of the ninth house. I won't go too much into it here, but just to say that the owner of his ninth house of Dharma was exalted, Mars, overcoming all enemies in the sixth house. The owner of the 10th house occupation, Venus, had gone to the ninth house, aspected by Jupiter, very dharmic, super spiritual activities, Jupiter in his own sign in fifth. So anyway, like this, when you look at the chart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you learn a little, understand a little bit of this science of Jyotish that the Brahmins would, most of the Brahmins would understand, you can see that it's not a normal personality. So we can actually see that now. We can confirm that all of these things are there. At the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he chose by his divine arrangement to advent himself at this time. It was a very, very auspicious time. So we read in this verse the resonance of Antariksha, right? The Bhuva Loka. So we know we have Bhu, Bhuva, Swa. Those who are chanting the Gayatri Mantra know, many people even have heard the Gayatri Mantra. It's very common in India. You can hear it on different recordings and so forth. And not the full Gayatri that we get all 7 mantras, but the first Brahma Gayatri. It's very common in India. So this is described, Bhu, Bhuva, Swa. And this Bhuva is the bit between the earth and the heavens. So Bhu is the place of fruitive activities. The earth, sometimes described as from all the planets up to the earth, so all the planets where the living entities are getting the results of their karma, their bad karmas, and they're creating more karmas in the earth region. And then Bhuva is, so let's go. So Swa is the top of the universe, that level up there. All the demigods, the devas who are actually running the universe and are very, very exalted. So in between there's what's called Bhuvaloka, and there's the beings who are very expert in singing and dancing, and they have subtle bodies. We see many times, if you read musicians of this world, they'll say, suddenly I got some inspiration. They almost personify it, that some entity gave me some inspiration to make this incredible music. So these beings have amazing dancing, singing abilities, but they're not like full-on devas. They're somewhere in between. So this is the Bhuva Loka. And this is described at the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that all of these beings were dancing. They felt, whether they understood it was a Supreme Lord or not, but they could understand the auspicious influence of the Lord was spreading all throughout the universe, and they were all dancing and singing very happily. So sometimes if we have a background in like materialistic science, Western science, we might think, oh, what is all this? Some beings living up here or whatever. And where's we say, oh, the astronauts have gone, they didn't see anything. We might think like that sometimes. So it's an interesting verse in Mahabharata, Bhishma Parva 5:22. It says, Achincha kalu ye bhava, natams tarkani yojayat, prakriti bhya param yacha, tad achintyasya lakshanam. And that means anything which is transcendental to material nature is called inconceivable, whereas arguments are all mundane. Since mundane arguments cannot touch transcendental subject matters, one should not try to understand transcendental subject matters through mundane arguments. Okay, so here the instructions of the Mahabharata is giving us that when things are inconceivable, excuse me, we shouldn't try to understand them through mundane logic, or we'll simply become very confused, right? Even in our personal relationships, our relationship with our family members, with our friends, if we try to just reduce it down to just mundane, argument, like a cooking recipe or something, you put 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of water and sugar, and this is the recipe. These kind of, when you're dealing with, dull matter, these things are very formulaic, But even in our own experience, we can understand that we can't reduce our relationships down to mundane, just ABC things. So what to speak of things that are above our experience, above the gamut of our senses, right? We cannot really understand them. And so the Mahabharata says, don't try to apply your mundane logic, mundane in the sense of logic to do with this world, like the speed sign says 50. If I do 75 and there's one of those little cars that says that it's check coming up, speed check, I will get a ticket and it's going to be $178 or whatever it is. This is mundane argument, mundane logic. This happens because of this, very just basic things. We can't try and apply that to things that are transcendental. So especially things that are spiritual, we cannot, but even things that are about this universe, where things are beyond our experience, we cannot apply that mundane logic, or we shouldn't apply that mundane logic, is being said by Mahabharata. We can understand to a degree, we can understand, importantly, we can understand what we cannot understand. I hope that doesn't sound too glib, but we can understand why we don't understand that. We don't have the senses. So we'll give a simple example here of this, and scientists have actually observed ants. So you might have observed an ant this morning walking here and there while you're doing your japa, but you probably didn't go into the great depth that some scientists have done in observing ants. And what they've observed is that ants definitely have a language, right? And ants definitely do communicate with each other. And they communicate in 12 ways. And some of those ways are alerting of danger, recognizing whether it's the same ant from the same colony, enticing to food source, exchange of food. They actually go and get some food. They actually give a little bit to the other ants and say, look, this is where I got. And the other one go, oh, I want more of that. And he'll go back. They leave trails of pheromones, different chemicals, to know where they should be going. So they do communicate, okay? So we're looking at the limitation of senses, and what we're trying to do is understand why we can understand the demigods. Why can't we understand that, right? So just imagine if an ant came and you were trying to explain to that ant, if you could speak all the ant languages, Imagine you were trying to explain to him what's going on here in the Bhagavatam class, right? How would you explain that? Is it an alert of danger? Is it recognizing another ant from the same colony? Is it... Do you want to ask a question now?
You know how ants see that ant is in their colony? The ant
Yeah. Through their antennas. Yeah, yeah.
And that's how they see that's not
Yeah, exactly, right? So they communicate with their antennas. So if we had antennas like an ant, or we could make a little robot ant that we could control its antennas, what could we tell that ant?
You could tell it we're not a threat.
Tell it what?
We're not a threat.
Oh, we're not a threat, exactly. Perfect. Yeah, we could tell it we're not a threat. We could tell it where some food is, right? But could we explain to that ant with those little ant robot antlers that we made, could we explain to it the Bhagavatam class? No, I don't think so. Because maybe some super divine spiritual ant we could. But generally the ant, like you said, he's just thinking about, is he an enemy, where's food, things like that, right? So the reason the ant can't understand, it's not that the Bhagavatam class doesn't exist, right? But it's that the senses, and therefore the mind, because the mind is only processing the senses of that ant, it doesn't have the vocabulary, it doesn't have the context, the syntax, it doesn't have the language to understand what's going on here, right? So if we take that same example and we imagine ourselves trying to understand what is the existence of these higher beings, how do they fly in the sky, and how do they eat, or how do they sing, and how do they travel, we don't have, our minds are working in this, physical body. We walk here, we go there, we need to sleep, we wake up, we got to eat, we got to go to the toilet, all these kind of things. We don't have the context or the language, the experience of those higher beings. So in this and different ways, we can at least understand why we can't understand, right? I think there was one famous American philosopher, I can't remember the name, but he had a saying something like, it's not what we don't know that gets us into trouble, it's what we think we know but that just ain't so, or something like that. Like, if we understand, if we think, yeah, we know everything about the universe and we're sending thing and we've got a big telescope now and we're getting a bigger telescope next year, if we think we know everything about it, then that's an issue, right? But if we understand, like, why is it logical that there's beings like ants and all the other things below us, or lesser awareness? Why wouldn't there be beings with higher awareness? That's not even logical, and it's quite egotistical, I would say, narcissistic maybe on a species level, to think that we're the culmination. So what we have to do when we're practicing, bhakti yoga, and we read about these things, we read about these descriptions, we don't have to believe. We don't have to believe. And how can we believe? Or what kind of belief is that? To say, I believe this is true, there are beings, and someone, okay, all right, but what does that mean to say I believe? Okay, we accept this is in the Shastra, and at minimum we should suspend our disbelief, right? Suspend our disbelief. If our mind is saying, well, just suspend. Just, what is that on the laptops? The old laptops is the suspend function, right? Just suspend, stay there. So we don't have to get all bent out of shape and worried about it. Why is this? Why is that? Whatever. Some disbelief comes up. How can that be true? Well, we suspend that. Push the suspend button. And what you'll find if you keep practicing, you keep chanting, and you keep following a sattvic lifestyle, you keep studying, what you'll find is you start to actually directly perceive that, of course it's like that. Why wouldn't it be like that? And of course those beings, they interact like that. And Krishna says this, verse, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyaksha Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. So Pratyaksha, right, we know means direct perception. Who knows what are the three Vedic evidences, three sources of Vedic evidence? Guru Sada Shastra is like the ultimate guiding principle in bhakti. But what are the three forms of Vedic evidence that are accepted? Pratyaksha is one of them. Sorry? Yeah? You're giving the Sanskrit, yeah. So what's that in English? You did it. I didn't know the Sanskrit, and you don't know. So we're a good pair.
Direct perception.
Yes, yeah. So pratyaksha means direct perception, like directly, like seeing it, like I see this cartels. So direct perception is an accepted Vedic proof. It is one kind of proof, right? You can see there's a sun in the sky. It's shining brighter than anything. When the sun goes down, it's very dark. So you can understand the sun is a source of light. And the other two are hearing from authorities, hearing from realized souls who are beyond the defects. And then the other one is like logical, like putting all that together. Like this, therefore this, right? The sun is, when the sun goes down, it's very dark. Therefore, we can understand that the sun is the source of light. Because when we see the sun, it's light. When the sun goes down. So these are the three things. We'll, as we progress, we will more and more directly perceive. And we may not perceive everything in this lifetime. We certainly won't. But at least we won't be held back from progressing. We don't want these things to hold us up. How can that be true? Mahabharata's saying, don't try to conceive of it. Just let it sit there. It's okay, right? Just let it sit there and go on, and you will see. You'll get direct perception as you proceed, as you progress. So another part of this purport, this very interesting purport here, is that Srila Prabhupada's going through all the different people that would come to these festivals, right? Prabhupada says here, professional dancers, blessers and singers, all of whom assemble together during household ceremonies, especially marriages and birth ceremonies. These professional men earn their livelihood by taking charity on such occasion from the homes of the Hindus. Eunuchs also take advantage of such ceremonies to receive charity. That is their means of livelihood. So there's a lot of talk now in the media, about gender and gender roles and things. I think anybody who follows the news or anything can see that it's a very big issue. It's actually mentioned in this purport here by Srila Prabhupada. So we'll sort of unpack this a little bit today. And this term eunuch is kind of sometimes thought of as like people who've undergone, in sort of popular culture, when the English and that would look at the Eastern cultures, the eunuch was like somebody who was actually deformed for looking after women or something like this. But in actual fact, eunuch is what the British termed as the general third gender, that whole category of third gender. Now, in the Vedas are very scientific. They're scientific, and they deal with every aspect of life, right? And the Brahmanda Purana, chapter 48, says that when the baby is when the baby is made, conceived, the secretions of the mother and father mix, and if the father is stronger, a male child comes. If the mother is stronger, a female child comes, and if they're somewhat equal, then you get a third gender. Tritiya Prakriti, right? Tritiya means third, and Prakriti means nature. So this is a word that is given to talk about, it's basically a not this, not that word, okay? So there's many different varieties of Tritiya Prakriti, but generally in the Vedas it said male, female, or Tritiya Prakriti. Even now on the forms, right, you see male, female, or other, right? So Tritiya Prakriti literally means third, a third option, that you're not directly male and you're not directly female. There's another option, right? So this is in the Vedas. It's Vedic. This is in the Brahmanda Purana. It's completely throughout all of the Jyotish literature. Like any Jyotish text, because the Jyotish has to deal with people's situation on a very down-to-earth level. There's so much detail about it. So in the modern science, and it seems like in the Vedic time was something like this, about 1 in 20 people have this orientation. It's about 5% of people, 1 in 20. Now we can see a good example of this in the Mahabharata when Arjuna. So Arjuna, he went to the heavenly planets. He saw his father Indra. He spent some time there, and there was one denizen, there's one heavenly lady very famous in Bhagavatam called Avasi. And she proposed to Arjuna that, she wanted to enjoy with Arjuna. And Arjuna knew the history that she was actually the mother of one of his great ancestors, because in the heavens they lived for thousands of years. So he had the blessing of Krishna to be able to go to the heavens, and he met this lady who was still very youthful, and she wanted to enjoy with him. But he said, no, you're my 20 generations back something mother. So no, and she tried to convince him and say, in the heavens we don't have this kind of human morality and blah blah blah. But he stuck to it. So she actually cursed him and said, you'll become third gender. You'll become impotent eunuchs because of this. And he couldn't understand. But later on, when they had to become incognito, what happened was that he actually presented himself as someone of a third gender person, and he said, I can be a music teacher in the court, a music teacher to the daughter, the princess. So normally, of course, the man's not going to be allowed in the inner chambers with all the women, but they actually tested him. The king tested him, and got blah blah whatever, some beautiful women to come, and found that no, he has no attraction at all. He's completely third gender, and so therefore he was allowed to do that. So we can see this is just one example. There's many examples there, but the point I'd like to make is that in the Vedic culture, third gender people weren't ostracized. They weren't called that this is devil or something like this, but it was just a scientific fact that 1 in 20 people they'll be equal, and therefore there's not exactly one or the other. And we can see here, and Prabhupada's bringing it out in the purport, that Prabhupada specifically brings this out in the purport when it's not there in the verse, it's not in the Bengali itself, but Prabhupada's giving us a window into Hindu culture. And he uses the word Hindu interestingly here because it's very much a cultural thing. It's very much a cultural thing. In Hindu culture, he's saying, he doesn't usually use that word, but he uses it twice in this section. That it was very common that people of third gender would come and they would give their blessings and they would sing, and the people holding the marriage or the celebration would give donations to them and make sure that they were happy, make sure that they were okay. So in the Vedic culture, everybody's looked after, everybody's cared for, everybody has a place in society. At the same time, there's social rules and social norms so that society functions very smoothly. We don't see that third gender marriages were celebrated as a big thing, but they were part of the marriage. They would come and give their blessings and dance, and they would get donations and everything. So they were a part of it, and that was their part in it, in their own in their own society, they have their own rules and their own way that they would work. But this is a way that there's two very different value systems, you might say, working together, but they work very harmoniously in Vedic culture. So of course, to this day, bhakti cannot be stopped by any material situation. So these are material external designations, external arrangement of society, and we can see it very clearly. It was a part of Vedic culture. It wasn't anything ignored or pretend it wasn't there or anything like that. But at the same time, there's no bar to anyone doing bhakti yoga. There's no bar to anyone chanting, and because this is spiritual, it's to do with the soul. And the particular circumstance of birth, whether it's a male or female or something in between, this is a secondary detail. Of course, it's important for the proper running of society externally, but internally, it's a detail, right? Developing love of God is our focus as devotees. It's the ultimate. Savai pumsam parodamo yato bhakti adhoksade, right? Ahaitika pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. It's the only thing that can ultimately satisfy us spiritually, and everybody has the same access to that. And just finally, the last class he's given here is Bhattas, a class of brahmanas that offer blessings and compose poems based on Vedic scriptures. This is their livelihood. One comment about this is that we can see the people who are musicians and actors and doing the plays and dances and all this. It's interesting contrast that in today's mass media, because you're able to take one dance or one song and duplicate it millions of times in everybody's TV or device nowadays, then these people can get huge income from that. But in the Vedic times, they were a part of it, but they weren't really worshipped in that way, right? People would worship the Lord, or they might worship a demigod, but they'd worship some more sattvic or pseudo-sattva personality, right? But nowadays, the people are actually worshipping the entertainers. They're worshipping the musicians and the dancers and things like that. But in the Vedic time, it wasn't like that. They were a part of it. They were given donation. They were taken care of. But they weren't worshipped in that sense. So that's something we can, just think about and meditate on how society is nowadays, and what would be in the Vedic system. Those people were all there. They were doing that. They were dancing and singing everything and entertaining. That was all there, right? But there wasn't this worship of entertainers and things like that. We can read from this. Just finishing on that point, in the Natya Shastra, so the Shastra that talks about the performing arts, the goals are given there that for the audience to experience the spiritual and the higher moral values within themselves, and through the art to experience that, and then to them aspire to a higher moral value by that art. That's actually one of the goals of the Natya Shastra, the Shastras which deal with entertainment and things like that. So entertainment and those things are there. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, it's there at the end of the day. We do our Dharma, we do some Artha, Kama, we have some nice time with the family, and then Moksha, we want to a little bit, forget the things. In the old times, the kings would have entertainments at night, and we hear from Prabhupada that even just recently in India, and probably still in some parts of India, but now it's gone down a lot, but people would hear Mahabharata, they would watch dramas of Ramayana and things that were uplifting to the consciousness. So in the same way for us, we obviously, we will want some kind of recreation, some kind of entertainment, that's naturally, but then the more we can make that entertainment is something that's uplifting to us. That is going to nourish us in a moral way. We can, there's so many things in Mahabharata and so many different Vedic stories and things that we can feel that sense of, or we can just hear somebody else read. These different scriptures, the pastimes of the Lord. But if we can try to make our entertainment and our sort of downtime, Krishna says, what is it, that one who's regulating his activities, eating, sleeping, recreation and work, can mitigate all pains. So he doesn't say that you'll get love of God by this, but he says you mitigate the painful situation of this material world by having proper eating, sleeping, recreation, proper work, everything in a proper balance, right? So there'll be something there, but that should be, for devotees, that should be something that's uplifting, and we should try to avoid, entertainment or these kind of recreational things that are in the lower modes. Certainly, obviously, if anything is breaking the principles, we don't go anywhere near it. But even any kind of entertainment or things that portray very adharmic kind of ideas and things, they do have an effect, and it's not ideal, it's not recommended. We should try always to have more of a sattvic and spiritual entertainment. So I'll leave it there. Hope you got something from this, and if there's any question or comments, yes, Prabhu.
So you mentioned that all the planets were nicely, lined up when Lord Caitanya appeared. You also said that you cannot apply mundane logic to divine personalities. So how does that correlate? So what I mean to say is that it seemed to be like a really nice astrology for Lord Caitanya.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
According to the planets and
same with Krishna and
although his father passed away when he was pretty young, his first wife died when he was young, he left the second one, his brother left home, all this kind of
He does have Saturn in Scorpio in the fourth house, but anyway.
Almost drowned once and in the ocean, so how does that reconcile?
So his birth chart is, Nilabha Chakravarti did his birth chart even before. He knew he was coming at this time because it's a very auspicious time. So his birth chart shows he's a great personality, right? But he doesn't show that everything in his life is going to be perfect. But he's doing pastimes. He's doing Leela. The Leela of him leaving. He left his wife who was very young, right? And took sannyas, and she was crying. But that crying is spiritual lamentation, right? You can go to Navadvip and see that Dhammasma Mahaprabhu deity, and that was her deity. She worshipped directly. So these are spiritual things, right? They're spiritual, activities. His father passing away. These are not like, his father passed away and then he got really into debt, and it's not like. He's not a mundane person, so yeah. But the first part of your question intrigued me a little more. You said that we shouldn't try to understand great personality through mundane logic, right? But is that what you're saying? Because his birth chart shows everything positive, but I didn't quite understand fully.
Well, he creates the law and he follows that law. So the law of karma is one of those. So according to his birth, he has very good karma.
No. He doesn't follow the law of karma. Yeah, he makes the law of karma. What is that? Bhagavad Gita. What is that? Which one? Yes, Maya Dakshena Prakriti, Suyate Sacharatram. So he says, Maya, this karma is going on under his direction. He's not under direction of karma. He's the director of karma. But he comes at that auspicious time. It's just like, we're just so disconnected from all this stuff. In about 300 AD, they took the whole moon cycles out of the calendar, and now it's doesn't even exist. Of course, it still does in India. But there's so many deep things that the ancient people were in touch with the world. The moon is a feminine for one, and if you take that out, you're not in touch. There's so many things, but the planets and the astrology being auspicious, that's just one aspect of his whole thing. You know, everybody's chanting here, everybody's chanting there. You know, the wives of the demigods are coming, everybody's bathing and chanting. You know, the planets were, like when Krishna appeared as well, the planets were auspicious, you know. Like, it's just a part of the whole thing that he does, but it's not like he has, like, looking at that shows his karma like a normal person, because where was he in his last life? You know, he wasn't here, so it's not like he has some reaction from past life or something like that. Yeah. But, so, it's, yeah. Is that something close to it? Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Normally on the eclipse, everybody stays in the
Yeah.
sky.
Yeah.
Why on that day everyone was in the Ganga?
Yeah.
He wants me to repeat it.
Yeah.
Normally in the eclipse, everybody stays inside, but
Yeah.
that day everybody was in the Ganga.
Yeah.
So why did that happen?
Well, that was their way of offsetting the inauspiciousness of the influence of Rahu, Ketu. When the eclipse comes, the Rahu element is stronger because that's to do with Rahu. So their way of dealing with that was to stand in a holy river and chant the holy names, you know. So
was that a worse eclipse than normal? Is that
No, it's just, it says you should do some spiritual activity. You should do some spiritual activity, yeah. Yeah, and if you're not, then at least don't go outside and try to do some crazy daredevil thing on your skateboard or something. Like, it's not a good time to do that, external things. But yeah, any spiritual activity is good. It's actually good for spiritual activity. Yeah. Anything else? Any other question? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to class and giving me this opportunity to read from scriptures. And that's it. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.